Hello! A long time ago, fairly soon after I got the boat, I recorded a video about how I get Wi-Fi and internet access on the boat. And I don't think a lot of people have seen that because I'm still getting questions about how I get the internet on the boat. And as I've recently had cause to change the gear I'm using, I thought I would do an updated video. And for long-time viewers of the channel, there is excitement because I'm going to start with some drawing. Yes, some hand drawing of how you get internet on a boat. Alright, first thing we need is a boat. Let's draw a narrowboat. There we go. Actually, that's surprisingly good for me, isn't it? Let's do the tiller. There we go. There's probably a couple of windows. Alright, that'll do. This is, after all, about the internet. Okay, there's a narrowboat. Hang on, we need water. No, we need water. There we go. Right, there's a narrowboat. And the question is, how do you get internet to it? Well, obviously in a house. It looks like a rather sad house, but it's a house. You would have your local phone exchange. I don't know what they look like, but they're probably a box. And there'd be a wire going from the phone exchange to your house, and that gives you your internet. But if you have a wire from the phone exchange to your boat, and then you move your boat, you're going to take the phone exchange with you. So that's obviously not practical. What you need is one of these, which I'm sure you immediately recognise as a cell phone tower. Clearly, that's a cell phone tower on some distant bit of land. Imagine that's on a hill somewhere. Actually, let's make that a hill. Right, that's on a hill somewhere. There we go. So there's your cell tower, and there's your boat. And this thing is transmitting. What do we have for transmitting? Let's have a light blue. Transmitting signals out. And here you are on your boat with, let's say, your phone, and your phone is picking up the transmitted signals, and that's how you get your 4G, or I suppose 5G very soon, but let's not go down that minefield. For the moment, 4G gets sent from the mast to your phone, and it doesn't matter if the boat moves because the signals go over the radio. So you need the same kind of setup, but in your boat. Now, obviously, some phones, you can set them to receive the 4G and retransmit it around the phone as a Wi-Fi network. And so you might think, well, that's all you need to do. Put your phone in hotspot mode and then go into the boat. There's you in the boat with your phone. There's the top of your arm. There's the phone. And you think, right, put that into hotspot mode and I'll have Wi-Fi throughout the boat. The trouble is, this being a steel narrowboat and you being inside it, these flipping radio signals just don't go in the boat very well. They bounce off it or something, and your phone reception inside the boat will be fairly horrific. Now, if you are, as this person is doing, standing right next to a window, the signals from here stand a chance of getting in, but they're still not going to be great because this whole metal thing just acts as a big Faraday cage, stopping the radio signals from getting in. So, what you want is an aerial on the boat that is outside. So let's put a pole, probably on the front. You might have your TV pole. Let's do a little TV aerial. There we go, it's on the front of your boat. And on that same pole, you could now stick a dedicated 4G aerial. And all these lovely signals coming off the cell tower will happily reach that because it's not within the metal of the boat. And then you take a cable from the bottom of, this should probably be thinner, shouldn't it, if it's cable? Oh, I can't go thinner. Okay. Take a cable off the bottom of the aerial, wiggle, 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 to a device inside the boat. You see, the device can be inside the boat because your aerial is outside picking up the signals. And then this device will create a little Wi-Fi hotspot and radiate Wi-Fi throughout the boat which your devices, your phone and your tablet and your telly, if you've got a smart telly or whatever, your laptop, can pick up. And this device here, this one, is called a 4G router, sometimes called a MiFi device. There are various other names, but the point is it picks up the 4G signal and redistributes it as Wi-Fi just on a very little local area such as inside your boat. And crucial to this whole thing working really well is having an external aerial, because as I say, if you try and pick up the try and pick up the 4G from within the boat, it just doesn't work very well. It can work if you're in a strong signal area, or if you're standing by the window. Some people buy these little boxes, they don't have an external aerial, and they just sellotape them to the window so that the signals can reach it. But ideally, for an optimum system, you have an aerial, wire, MiFi device, and then that radiates the Wi-Fi throughout the boat. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So that is the principle of how you get internet on a boat, and my first system involved a little Huawei portable 4G router. Let's not get into a debate about whether Huawei is a good or bad company. The router was great and it worked fine, and it had sockets for an external aerial. I could power it off USB, and it was a tiny little device. You've got to watch, incidentally, if you look for some of those, a lot of them don't have sockets for an aerial, and you really do want aerial sockets, because otherwise the device will be like using your mobile phone inside the boat, so you'll have to gaffer tape it to the window or something to get a signal. So I used the little Huawei device and I bought an external aerial. This is the one. It's got a magnetic base, stubby little thing, worked very well. Just clonked it on the top of the boat, just up at the front, underneath the cratch cover, so it was on the lip of the front of the boat, in the well deck, just underneath the cratch cover, and load of aerial cable came all the way down inside. I think I either drilled a hole or made use of an existing hole where the TV aerial came in, and then it came down to this teensy-weensy little connector which is called the TS9, and that plugged into the Wi-Fi device. You'll notice this is a single connector, but the devices sometimes have two connectors for aerials. We'll come back to that in a second. And the Huawei device was great, and it worked very well for about 3 years, until one day I came back from, I think I went away for a few days, and I'd switched everything off in the boat, including the little Huawei device. And when I came back and switched it on again, it just would not boot up. It flashed its LEDs in some sort of error pattern, and it wouldn't even get to the point of doing anything useful. And I took the battery out, I took the SIM card out, I rebooted it several times, but no, that Huawei device was gone. And for the life of me, I could not manage to order the same device again. I'd have been quite happy with it, but when I went onto Amazon and tried to get the same device, they kept sending me one that was very slightly different. It had the model number the same, 1234 or whatever, and then there was a suffix on the model number, -ABC. And if you had the one that was -ABC or whatever, it came with aerial sockets. And if you had the one that was -BCA, it came without aerial sockets. And dear old Amazon kept sending me the one without aerial sockets, even though it was listed as the one with aerial socket. Nightmare. Couldn't get it, so I ended up replacing it with a Netgear device. And again, this fitted the brief. It could be powered off USB. It had two aerial sockets there, and it had reasonably good reviews. Nice portable, compact little device. Unfortunately, I was never terribly happy with this either, because the Wi-Fi signal that it generated within the boat was fairly poor, such that if I wanted to use the iPad, do a little internet browsing in bed of a night, it really didn't reach the back of the boat very well, and the signal kept dropping out. So although it got a good 4G signal, the local Wi-Fi signal it created wasn't very good, and it was supposed to be able to create a 2.4 and a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and yet for some reason when I had them both running I had problems with the laptop, so I ended up just running 2.4 gigs anyway, which honestly for one person on a boat it's perfectly fast enough, but I don't recommend that device. And also the reason this one has just been replaced is that after using it for 2 years, this started rebooting itself at random, which was very annoying. And I went to look at the screen, and the screen, by the way, it is a touch screen and is rubbish. You'd press it and it wouldn't respond, or you'd press it and it would take it as a double tap. Not very impressed with this at all. But anyway, this started rebooting itself and it kept saying, battery is full, stop charging. But I didn't want to take the USB out because then it would just be running on the battery, and after an hour or so or whatever, it would run down. And I'd probably be in the middle of uploading a video or something when it switched off, and I'd come running over and plug it back in again. So I preferred to keep it permanently plugged in. Turns out this was a bad idea if you still have the battery in device, because when I took the back off, the battery was bulging. I mean, literally physically, the whole battery was about to bulge. And these lithium batteries, if they bulge too much, I believe they can get to the point where they set themselves on fire, which would not have been good. So I took the battery out, obviously, disposed of that down the local authority tip. And this could have run without the battery in it with the USB plugged in, I then discovered. But by this point, I have a feeling the battery bulging had actually cracked the circuit board in here because it just kept rebooting itself still. So this is a defunct item, and I don't want another one because, as I say, its local Wi-Fi network wasn't very good. So I've bought another. And this is the new device. It's a Zyxel, who I've never heard of before, but there's some sort of communications company, I think more focused at home business users rather than a typical home user. But it's a reasonably small little device, and once again it fulfills all my requirements. Namely, I can power it from USB. It's got the two aerial sockets. It's got the slightly bigger version of the aerial sockets. They're not called TS9, they're called something else, which I forget right now. It's even got a couple of, look, good old-fashioned wired LAN ports on the back. So if I wanted to, I don't know, plug a printer in or something that wasn't wireless, they could go in there. And it's got some little status LEDs on the front, tell you if it's powered up, tell you if it's got a good connection or a bad connection. The LEDs flash in an exciting manner to let you know that it is exchanging data with the 4G network. And I also upgraded my aerial to go with this, so instead of having this little tiny little thing with just the one antenna in it, I've bought a cross-polarized omnidirectional pointing thing, and pointing is the brand. And the whole omnidirectional cross-polarized things means that within the antenna, it's got one that's vertically polarized and one that's horizontally polarized. And that way, whichever way the cell site base station is polarized, the antenna will still pick it up. And it means that it plugs one in here and one in here, and then this picks whichever aerial is getting the strongest signal. So in theory, you get a more reliable signal. Now this thing, do I like it? Yes and no, again with caveats. When it's working, it works very well. Gets a good signal, puts a good Wi-Fi all around the entire length of the boat, so that is a good thing. However, in the 2 months I've owned this, I've had to reboot it 3 times because it just seems to stop talking to the 4G network. And it's not that EE, which is my provider, has gone up the Swanee, because if I get my phone out, that's still connected fine. This thing just seizes up. It's still talking on the Wi-Fi. All my devices are connecting to this, but they can't see the internet because this has stopped talking to the internet. Reboot it, bosh, straight back online again. So it's clearly a problem with this device. And as I say, I've had to do it, I think 3 times, which is kind of irritating. It's firmware version 1. There doesn't seem to be a later version of the firmware. And even though the firmware is dated 2020, when you do the configuration for this thing, it's got a load of presets for different mobile phone networks around the world. But the UK ones are listed like T-Mobile, which hasn't been T-Mobile for ages, and Orange, which hasn't been Orange for ages. Forget what they are now, but aren't they now owned by EE? I think they are, but it didn't have a preset for EE anyway, and the T-Mobile and Orange ones didn't work, and I had to go into the manual settings. And this was a nuisance because then you have to start typing in stuff about your access point code, and I fiddled around with it for a long time and it would not connect, and I was tearing my hair out, and eventually realised it was claiming to be connected over IP version 6 without an IP version 4 connection, and it wasn't. And if I disabled this from trying to use IP version 6, bingo, that sorted it. Now it would connect to 4G with IP version 4. So that's the trick. If you've got one of these and it won't talk, even though it says it's connected, it's probably not connected. Turn off IP version 6 and it will connect over V4, and then it works fine. So since then, I am reasonably happy with this. If they release a firmware update that makes it able to stop disconnecting, that would be even better. Now, the trouble with upgrading, I say trouble, it wasn't that much of a trouble, but the trouble with upgrading to a device that actually uses a dual aerial antenna is that I needed to take my old antenna off and put the new antenna on, and that had 2 wires coming down instead of 1, which wouldn't fit through the hole I already had. So I had to do a bit of DIY, and here's the tale of me doing that. This involves delving down the back of the TV where the wires are. You can see the little aerial cable there, and also the micro, or is it mini USB that I was using to power the router. And the aerial cable I had just cable clipped right into the corner of the panelling there, and up into the corner of the boat where it could go through a hole that already existed because the TV aerial came in that way, and one of the previous owners of the boat had put the cable in there. But in order to take all that out, first things first, I needed to clear a space, telly out the way, and then de-clip the cable off the wall. And then because it goes right up into the corner, I needed to take this trim panel off. And quite a lot of the wires in the boat run along these ceiling trim panels, you'll see in a second. And this is, I think, about 8 screws. And once you've pulled them off, you just wiggle the wood a bit. It's quite a tight fit. And look at that. There's wiring there. The white cable is the TV aerial. There's the radio aerial in there. There's the wiring to the loudspeakers. I never really use the hi-fi system on the boat, but it does have one. In fact, that hole there is coming from the radio aerial. And right in the corner where that white wire is going is out into the well deck, out to the TV aerial, and I needed to make that hole bigger so that I could bring in my new aerials. And as you can see, I had previously put sealant round that hole to stop rain getting in. And you've got both the TV aerial there, and that black cable there was the old aerial. Lots of spider webs round there. The spiders do love a well deck. So first of all, let's brush them out the way, and then I could see about trying to pry out that old sealant. I don't know why, but I'd never given any consideration to ever swapping that system. So I'd sealed it in pretty well, but a bit of time with a knife meant that that could come out. The TV aerial is on a little, I don't even know what you call those connectors, but I was able to just pull that off. But I would still need to actually take that out and push that cable through in order to drill the bigger hole. So first thing I had to do was dismantle the flipping TV aerial. And after a lot of toing and throwing, I pulled that off, only to discover there's a little screw on there that I should have loosened. Never mind. We live and learn. I'd entirely forgotten about that. The aerial still seems to work. So having taken that off, I could now push the TV aerial back through the hole. There it goes. Bye-bye TV aerial. And then pull out the old antenna cable for the 4G. Ta-da! We have a hole, which I could now make bigger. And it would have to be bigger, because as you can see, I can't get the new aerial cables through it. The problem I've got is that that hole is slightly bigger than 10mm, but it's still not big enough for even one of these to go through. Only fractionally, but just not big enough. And the only steel drilling drill bit I've got is a 10mm drill. So I've either got to find someone who's got a bigger drill and borrow it, go to the shops and buy one just for this one-off task, which seems a bit excessive, or use the 10mm and wiggle it around like mad while it's spinning and hope that that will make the hole bigger. And that's the approach I'm going to go for. The classic Bodget and Scarper method then. Now, a little bit awkward here because I wanted to drill from this side so that I would definitely be drilling above where all the nice trim is round the window. I didn't want to go through that wood trim, and if I drilled from the other side I had a feeling I would suddenly come out below the level of the trim panel that you saw me taking off earlier. I didn't want to come out below that, I wanted to come out in it. Unfortunately, as you can see, that meant I was drilling at a slight angle, so instead of a bigger hole, I now have a figure of 8 hole. But you know what? It's nearly good enough, because if you attack it with a file, and this took a little bit of work, but I smoothed off all the edges and made it bigger, and oh yes, first cable through, and because they're a figure of 8, that means it's big enough for me to squeeze the second one through as well. And then I can just feed that all the way down if it would actually go. I think it's catching on the old cables in the thing, and that's the TV aerial cable coming back out the other way. I'd have to stick the end back on that later. stuffed some cotton wool in the hole to stop spiders getting in just while I tested everything was working, and then I put sealant on that later. And then back inside, you can see the white cable there now coming down behind the telly, ready to plug into the new router device, and everything back in place. Hurrah! Okay, let's run a speed test and see how we are doing. Oh, that's not bad, is it? I'm in a fairly poor internet signal area here. The little indicator light on the front of the router unit is amber, which means I'm not happy with the signal I'm getting. It should be green if it's in a strong area. So I think 20 down, 21 down in a weak signal area and 8 up. Actually not too bad. I think if I was in a better signal area, those numbers would be even higher. And let's face it, for watching Netflix, which I think they stream at about 2 megabits a second, and I've got 10 times that on the download, so no problem streaming iPlayer or whatever. And 8, okay, not superb up, but if I need to upload a video that is particularly long, I can just let it run overnight. So that's not too bad, and as I say, in a better signal area, those numbers would be even higher. Well, there you go. It all sounds fairly long and tortuous, but really it isn't. You buy an aerial, you stick it outside on a pole or something, you run a cable through a hole in the boat, and then stick some guns around it so it doesn't let water in, down to a 4G router device of some sort. You power it off 12 volts or USB, and then you've got Wi-Fi in your boat. You need a SIM card in this. You'll have to pay a certain amount per month, obviously, for your data, but I'm on an unlimited plan with EE, for which I pay about £30 a month. A lot of boaters swear by 3, who are definitely cheaper, but I know a lot of boaters also don't swear by 3, and I've always found EE to be very good, so I'm happy to keep paying that money because it works. Hope that was useful. Any questions, drop them down below and I will do my best to answer. Cheers now. Bye-bye.